Hey everybody, this is Mr. Moffman coming at you with another APUSH video. Today we're taking a look at topic 6.10, the development of the middle class. Now, of course, we're talking about the first real emergence of the middle class in American history, taking place during the Gilded Age, the late 1800s. And when we do talk about this expanding middle class, we are seeing this growth in the form of emerging white-collar jobs. Now, when we say white-collar, we mean jobs that are non-labor jobs in nature. In other words, you're using your mind, your education, as opposed to your muscles to do your job. And these jobs are going to be primarily found in urban areas. So understand that one of the things that kind of parallel each other is that as the middle class expands, so does urbanization, and as we'll talk later on, suburbanization. And when we do talk about this emerging middle class, these white-collar jobs, well, what do these jobs include? Well, folks that served in management, particularly middle management in these factories, the folks that are going to be, supervising what the laborers do, taking care of, sales, taking care of any type of engineering that has to be done with regards to these factories. So all sorts of types of scientists that are going to be involved in this, accountants that are going to be critical in the business world, clerical individuals, such as secretaries, and as we said before, advertisers, sales, stuff like that. So understand that, a lot of these emerging white-collar jobs are going to be tied to the business world. Now, obviously, not all of them. You're going to be having continual white-collar jobs, like, for example, people being teachers or ministers and stuff like that has been around forever, obviously, as well. Now, something else that is going to be emerging during this time period, and in many respects a reaction to what was this, growth of the uber-wealthy industrial class for the first time during the Gilded Age, will be something known as the Gospel of Wealth. Now, the Gospel of Wealth is going to be written by Andrew Carnegie, pictured right here. Now, if you don't recall, Andrew Carnegie was basically the king of steel during the Gilded Age. A man that came from very humble origins. He was a Scottish immigrant. Grew up, basically, working on the floor of a cigar. Making cigars in his home, to immigrate to the United States and, getting into the business of iron, building bridges, and of course steel, and was able through, amazing talent, hard work, and let's be honest, and just downright cutthroat, business practices to amass an unbelievable financial empire. Now, unlike some others that are going to be part of this industrial class, Carnegie is not going to be an over-the-top embodiment of conspicuous consumption, but rather he is going to be in support of this idea that the rich have an obligation to help the poor, and that's where the Gospel of Wealth comes in. That the idea being is that if you are fortunate enough to become part of the super uber wealthy class of society, like himself and people like Rockefeller and Jay Gould and Cornelius Vanderbilt, William Vanderbilt, those folks, that you have a responsibility to help the poor, and you help the poor through philanthropy. And note, he's very, very specific in terms of what this help is supposed to look like. He doesn't believe, for example, in giving direct cash assistance to the poor, but rather he believes that those that are of the wealthy, successful class have shown the ability to know what is best for society as a whole. That's why they're wealthy to begin with. Obviously, you can see some of the influence of social Darwinism in where the Gospel of Wealth is coming from. So, in other words, if wealthy industrialists like himself are so successful, then they know what's best for society. And so the idea is to use their own extra money, which in many cases, like Carnegie, was considerable amounts of money, and to spend that money yourself on a way that you think is best for society. So in other words, it's not, handing money to people on the street so they can just pay the rent. It's the idea of, for example, in the case of Carnegie, building libraries. Carnegie is going to be building libraries across the United States, even locally. The Lebanon Library, just a few miles up the road, was built by Andrew Carnegie. The idea being is that you can use that money to build places where people can get a free education. Remember, a library is in essence a location to gain a free education, and therefore you can have the means to build yourself up, to overcome poverty. So that's going to be significant. So the idea being is that the wealthy know what is best for everybody else, and to provide resources for that. In the case of somebody like Carnegie, he's going to be spending millions upon millions of dollars in those days on building libraries, funding university research. In fact, there's Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh is named in part after him. Promoting the arts, Carnegie Hall in New York City, et cetera, et cetera. And on one level, this is obviously a positive thing. The idea that industrialists have a responsibility to help everybody else, and that they should not die poor. In fact, Carnegie writes, the rich man that dies poor, thus dies disgrace. In other words, that you are almost like a blight on society if you don't use that extra wealth to help society. But in many cases, also, it's going to be viewed as quite paternalistic and condescending. The idea being is who are you to decide what is best for society? Who are you to decide what the people need? You're not an elected representative. You're not held accountable to the people in terms of elected office and stuff like that. So who do you think you are? And the other component of this is that folks like Carnegie believing that the rich have the responsibility to use their assets to help the poor. This is happening at the same time that they also believe that the government should not be using resources to help the poor. So once again, there is a sense of arrogance that does kind of go along with the gospel of wealth. But once again, certainly better than the idea of just making these vast sums of money just to simply show off a lavish lifestyle, if you will. Now, continuing our tour of parts of life in the Gilded Age is the impact that it's going to have on women. We're going to be seeing the growth of women working outside the home. By 1900, you can see here that 1 in 5 women will be working outside the home. Now, do not take this to mean that this is a sign particularly of emerging feminism, or an assertion of women's rights. I mean, there is the suffragette movement, which is picking up steam, and that's certainly speaking to that. But when we talk about women working outside the home, this is really in situations where financially the family doesn't have much of a choice, or you are a woman that does not have a spouse to provide financially for you and stuff like that. As you can see here, only 5% of married women are working outside the home. So much more likely you are a young woman that is not married, doesn't have anybody else to provide financially for you. Now, women that are going to be working outside the home, these women are going to be generally pigeonholed into some very specific jobs, such as clerical work, meaning being a secretary, education as a teacher, nursing. These are going to be fields that are going to be seen as socially acceptable for women. So once again, even if you are a woman that's working outside the home, you don't have a whole ton of options. That being said, though, more women are going to be gaining an education, a college education, though those numbers are rising slowly, not dramatically. And note, when we talk about women having the opportunity to get a college education, these are almost entirely women that come from families of means. That a working class woman almost certainly is not going to be able to get that college education. Now, something else that is going to be seen as part of the emerging United States middle class is the growth of urban areas. Urbanization is going to be booming during the Gilded Age. A lot of it obviously being the fact that this is where the factories are going to be built. This is where the jobs are. And so people are going to go where the jobs are. And as big cities are emerging, you're also going to be seeing subsequently the growth of suburbs. A suburb is a community that exists just outside of a major urban area. That are usually within, especially in these days, just a few miles of the downtown area. In Cincinnati at the time, we're talking about, communities such as, Hyde Park, Oakley, Norwood, folks, communities like that that are just outside of Cincinnati. And these areas are going to start to become more and more popular as we go through the Gilded Age. And there's a number of reasons why. First off, land is going to be cheaper out in the suburbs than in the big cities. As more and more people are moving to the big urban cores, that demand for a very limited amount of territory is going to be driving up real estate prices. But if you move out a few miles from downtown, less demand, cheaper land. Note also, we're going to be seeing growth in infrastructure to allow for mass transit to connect these suburban areas to the downtown areas. More and more cities are going to be implementing streetcars, like New York and Philadelphia and Boston, places like that, that you can hop on this streetcar and ride a couple miles into the downtown area to go to work every day, and then hop on that streetcar and go a few miles outside of downtown and go live. So this is going to be helping in terms of moving the ever-growing amount of people moving to the urban areas in efficient ways, and as I said a moment ago, promoting suburbs. Note also that something else that's going to be playing a role is racism. As more and more people are moving to urban areas, especially as a result of growing immigration rates, and immigration is becoming much more diverse in terms of nations of origin. So you've got not just folks that have English and French and Dutch and German and Irish ancestry coming to the United States, but also you are seeing folks coming from Southern and Eastern Europe, places like Italy and Greece and Russia and Poland and Hungary and Turkey and China from Asia, etc. Unfortunately, as this is becoming more diverse ethnically and racially, you're going to be seeing more and more whites wanting to live away from people of color, people of different ethnicities or religions. A lot of this is going to be driven by white Protestants that do not want to be living near Catholics or people of color. So moving out to the suburbs gives you kind of this oasis, if you will. It's a horrible thing to say, but that kind of coming from that mindset. Of course, living in the suburbs gives you more privacy. So you don't have to deal with the hustle and the bustle and the noise and the pollution and all the crime and all that other kind of stuff that's becoming more and more associated with the urban areas as time goes on. And so there's a sense of quiet and peace and a sense that you can be away from all that hustle and bustle. And in many respects, this is going to be coinciding with this idea of what the American dream is supposed to be. Of course, this idea of an American dream has been around, almost since day one of independence, and it's evolved over time. And now it's starting to move into more of a sense of what we kind of understand it today. The idea being is that you've made it in society if you can move out to a quiet area where you own a home of your own, you have a piece of property, you build the white picket fence, you have the ability, to have a comfortable life and have a job and a family and, all that kind of stuff. We start to see that associated more and more with living in the suburbs. So we'll go ahead and leave that there for today. We'll see you in the next video.